So now that the summer has arrived, I do want to continue with producing teaching videos, but understanding that this is more of a summer school, maybe a little more casual time. I'm going to do them in a shortened version, and so I'm going to call them summer shorts. And I'm going to try and keep these to 15 minutes, maybe 20 at most, and many of them will be less than that. And put these out hopefully every week to kind of keep you engaged with the learning and discipling process until the fall when I'll restart with my regular series. We are approaching the 4th of July holiday, so I thought maybe it would be appropriate for this particular video to talk about America's Christian roots and the fact that America was founded on Christian principles, even though some critics or skeptics or quote scholars, whatever, would argue that the founders really wanted to establish a secular nation. I think the evidence is overwhelming in contradiction to that in fact they founded the nation on Christian principles. But I want to take a closer look at So I want to take a closer look at the evidence, or at least a little bit of it, in the short amount of time that I have in this particular lesson. So America was born as a Christian nation, I contend. It was founded on Christian principles, and despite what the critics may argue, I think the evidence is pretty clear that the vast majority of the signers of the Declaration of Independence, for example, were devout Christians and not deists. Yes, there were a few, maybe a handful at most, who you could describe accurately as deists. The vast majority were devout Christians. Even this notion of the separation of church and state, which came up later, really at its root was just from a letter that Thomas Jefferson wrote to a denomination in Connecticut to assure them that the United States would not establish a national church, which is, of course, what the experience of those who had come from England, for example, where there was the Church of England, the Anglican Church. He was assuring them that that would not happen, and there would be kind of an equal footing for all the different denominations that were here in America. So as we celebrate the 4th of July, what evidence exists, whether it be the Declaration of Independence or really anywhere else in terms of what the intentions of the forefathers were?
Living with opioid addiction can be a struggle. Sublocade with counseling is for adults with moderate to severe.
Get rid of that.
What role should religion play in a free society? More and more people today would answer, none. That would not have been the answer of the founders of the United States, the men who fought the American Revolution and wrote the country's Constitution. To them, the issue of religion and freedom were inextricably linked. You couldn't have freedom without religion. In fact, the political philosophy of the founders necessitated a divine foundation. Thomas Jefferson makes this clear in the Declaration of Independence when he writes that all men are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights. The purpose of government, Jefferson and his compatriots believed, was not to bestow rights. Rather, it was to protect those rights already endowed upon human beings by God. But government isn't enough for a free society. A moral people is also required. That is, a people moral enough to police itself. Virtue or morality, George Washington observed, is a necessary spring of popular government. Thus, for the founders, liberty was not merely the ability to do what one wanted. It came with moral demands and boundaries. They all accepted the rule of life expressed by Benjamin Franklin. Nothing brings more pain than too much pleasure, nothing more bondage than too much liberty. The founders knew that the absolute enemy of freedom was, ironically, a freedom that was absolute and unrestrained. And where was this restraint going to come from? Their answer was religion, which for them because of when and where they lived, was some variety of Christianity. Let divines and philosophers, statesmen and patriots unite, Samuel Adams wrote, in instructing citizens in the art of self-government. In short, of leading them in the study and practice of the exalted virtues of the Christian system. The Christian system to which Adams refers is composed of Judeo-Christian values, the values rooted in the Old and New Testaments, both of which were referred to by the founders with equal conviction and frequency. Jefferson, yes, the very same Thomas Jefferson who is so often portrayed as anti-religious, confirmed this sentiment in his notes on the state of Virginia, when he asked, "Can the liberties of a nation be thought secure when we have removed their only firm basis, a conviction in the minds of the people that these liberties are the gift of God, and that they are not to be violated but with his wrath?" James Madison likewise affirmed the essential connection between religion and morality. The belief in a God all-powerful, wise, and good is essential to the moral order of the world and to the happiness of man. John Adams believed that the doctrine of a supreme, intelligent, wise, almighty sovereign of the universe, a doctrine he credited to Judaism, was the great essential principle of all morality and consequently of all civilization. And he applied this thinking specifically to the new nation he helped to create. Our Constitution, he said, was made only for a moral and religious people. It is wholly inadequate to the government of any other. As president, he replied to a letter from university students in a way that would surprise many today. Science, liberty, and religion have an inseparable union. Without their joint influence, no society can be great, flourishing, or happy. Meanwhile, another founder, Alexander Hamilton, looked at the French Revolution and saw something much different. That revolution, unlike the American Revolution, had devolved into violence and chaos. Hamilton believed he understood why. The anti-religious force it unleashed, he wrote, annihilates the foundations of social order and true liberty, confounds all moral distinctions, and substitutes for the mild and beneficent religion of the gospel a gloomy, persecuting, and desolating atheism. For the founders, a free society divorced from religion simply could not work and would not survive. It is no wonder then that in his farewell address, George Washington chastised those who would claim to be patriots and yet undermine the influence of religion. Of all the dispositions and habits which lead to political prosperity, religion and morality are indispensable supports. In vain would that man claim the tribute of patriotism who should labor to subvert these great pillars of human happiness, these firmest props of the duties of men and citizens. The founders did not demand that anyone believe in any particular religion or even in God. Quite the contrary. But while they understood the value of a secular government, they feared a secular society, one without religion. So should we. I'm Joshua Charles, writer and researcher at the Museum of the Bible for Prager University.
So the nation was found on biblical principles, and for much of our history, whether it be through government or through public education or just the culture at large, it was accepted basically that Christianity and at the very least a biblical religion was at the foundation of our nation. Something very, very important happened in 1962, and that is that it was decided by the government that prayer should be removed from public schools. Up until then, it was perfectly permissible for there to be Bible reading. As a matter of fact, in our earliest history, the Bible is what was used. Biblical readings were used to teach reading to public students. In 1962, prayer was removed from school. God was, in essence, removed from this public schoolhouse. And it's certainly very interesting, if not instructive, to see what has happened to our culture since then. And of course, these 5 charts that you can see show what happened. In terms of violent crime, all of a sudden, a quick ascendancy of violent crime. Single-parent households, again, steeply climbing. Premarital, intimate relationships, climbing in a steep vertical slope. birth rates to unwed mothers climbing very quickly. And in terms of education itself in the schoolhouse, the SAT scores dropping dramatically over the decades. And so God being kicked out from schools certainly did us no good as a culture and a society, and certainly from an educational standpoint as well. So the bottom line is that our founding fathers were very religious men, and in fact, overwhelmingly Christian, who created a form of government, self-governance, if you will, based on biblical, if not Christian principles. And in fact, as the video shared with us, they stated in their writings that they feared for the survival of the nation, should it be that these self-governing people would not be religious in terms of their morality. Certainly it is true, as Jefferson's letter indicates, that they did not intend to have a national church, as they had many fled from England and the state church over there. And so that was not the intent. There should be obviously all the different denominations and even different religious systems would be invited. But at the same time, they knew that religious faith was a requirement. It was a prerequisite to the success of this experiment in self-governance. And of course, for them, for the majority of them, that faith that they were pointing to was the Christian faith. But the sad fact is that their original intentions have been, at this point in our history, watered down, ignored, and even changed in resulting in what we now see in these battles over what is purported to be the original intent of separation of church and state. And as I said, kind of a misreading of that. Certainly, in my final thoughts here, it would in fact be difficult to dispute the fact that God has shed his grace on thee, that God has indeed blessed America. He has protected us. He has provided for us generously. We are the richest, most powerful nation that the world has ever known. And other than obviously a civil war and a sort of a brief skirmish, if you will, with the British in 1812, we really have not seen war on our shores. But the problem we face today is that slowly but surely, we as a nation have been turning our backs on our Lord. We obviously not started, but a big step at least was removing him, banning him from the public school, and more banning him from public discourse. People are ridiculed. People are looked at with scorn. We've had Supreme Court justices, candidates who have come before Senate committees, and if they're too religious, they're obviously looked upon as dangerous to be on the court. But of course, the more we do abandon our belief, our faith, our worship, and our gratitude, the more our culture will continue to decline, and we risk our demise as a nation. I'll leave you with the quote that many of you are, I'm sure, familiar with from 2 Chronicles. If my people who are called by my name will humble themselves and pray and seek my face and turn from their wicked ways, and I will hear from heaven and will forgive their sin and will heal their land. So I hope that we will take heed. Revival starts in the church. It doesn't start in the culture. It has to start in the churches and spread from there. And so I frequently pray that the Lord will spark and fan the flames of revival in America and move us back towards those roots from which we came. So hopefully you'll look for the next Summer Shorts version. And thanks for taking a look. God bless you.